for that very warm introduction, and thank you all for being here this evening. Your institution, your university is doing extraordinarily well. And so it won't surprise you, though, that as we note that excellence and that achievement and that momentum, the university has not stopped to catch its breath. This is a place, I have learned, that is constitutionally incapable of being complacent. It's one of the best and I think most engaging characteristics I have found about Johns Hopkins. That for all the excellence, for all the humanity, for all the achievement that this institution enjoys, there is no sense that it's time to coast, that having one achievement behind it, it's time to move on to the next one. And so it's in that context, I like to just share a few themes with you about things that I'm hoping to do with you, with colleagues on campus, and indeed with alumni internationally, to really move our university to the next level. And for those of you who had a chance to hear or see my remarks from the installation, you'll know that I sounded three themes for the installation about things that I was hoping to achieve during my tenure at Johns Hopkins. One is to focus on building the strongest possible environment for individual achievement and for worrying about not just what happens when individuals, faculty, students, staff come to Johns Hopkins, but who comes to Johns Hopkins? How accessible are we as an institution? Are we bringing the very best to our campus? And then ultimately, are we giving them an experience that is commensurate with their strengths, their interests, their aspirations? So the first part is to start off with the individual and locate the individual centrally in how we think about the university. So that's one theme. The second theme that I've talked a lot about is the idea of Johns Hopkins as one university. And, you know, in a lot of ways, that almost seems like a trite claim that we are one university, but you can imagine, and I'll return to this in a moment, as we think about a university that is distributed across multiple campuses within the Baltimore area, going into Washington, then to Bologna and to Nanjing, you can see already the challenges that we have in thinking about how we knit all of the various divisions of the university together and create a strong university identity. And then finally, a theme that is very important for us, and again, I think really resonates for Johns Hopkins, is Johns Hopkins in the community. And in particular, how do we think of Johns Hopkins as being a critical contributor to a member of the communities, and I use that in plural, in which we dwell. So those are the three themes: individual excellence and accessibility, one university, and communities. So let me turn back to the first one, the individual. I think for me, what makes me so excited about being here at Johns Hopkins, and indeed why I've devoted my life to higher education in the last decade or so to higher education, or a decade and a half to higher education leadership, is just because of the special character of the university as an institution that is so deeply committed to the idea of individual self-realization. There are so few institutions, I believe, in society that start off and say, what we are about is simply promoting the full potential of individuals, their intellectual and moral development, that we say that's what we're about. You know, you're not here in service to some other goal or desire, but you are here to achieve your personal best, and we're going to try and create an environment that allows you to do that. And I think that's something special about the university. Now, why is that such a powerful idea? You know, for me, it's captured in the great success we enjoyed this past fall when Carol Greider was the 33rd individual associated with Johns Hopkins to receive a Nobel Prize. And as you'll know, Carol received the Nobel Prize in medicine. She is only the 9th woman to receive a Nobel Prize of any stripe, and she quite remarkably, and this is very humbling, she achieved this honor for work that she did when she was, wait for it, 23 as a graduate student, and she made a fundamental discovery about the role of telomeres and telomerase. It's an enzyme that deals with the integrity of chromosomes, and in particular individual chromosomes are prevented from shortening by almost like plastic-like ends of shoelaces that are on the ends of chromosomes. These are telomeres. And this is a very important discovery. Now, this is a discovery that has implications for all sorts of different diseases. It clearly has potential for cancer research because as telomeres shorten, cells die. And the fact that some cancers, of course, don't die and continue to replicate may indicate that there's something unique about the nature of their telomeres and how there is almost perpetual life in those cells. It turns out this may have implications for other diseases. What's important is that Carol's work and work that she did as a graduate student has since subsequently, while being at Hopkins, has deepened and has taken a number of different directions, was spawned by just an idea that she had. She was curious about cell replication and about chromosomes, didn't have any particular application in mind, just wanted to pursue an idea and wanted an environment that would allow her to pursue some hypotheses she had about chromosomal character. And that's a remarkable thing because for me, as president and indeed as someone who's long been in the academy, what you're so struck by is the really important insights that come from science and indeed in other fields. The insights that ultimately shift paradigms are ones that are often happen by happenstance. Ideas that weren't, something that necessarily an investigator had in their mind at the time that they found some basic discovery, but applications that came later after just a curiosity-driven question was answered. And that's something that goes on every day at Johns Hopkins and something that's really important for us to nurture and encourage so that, again, through our basic discovery, we can see the kinds of applications that ultimately translate into new therapies, new treatments that will make a difference in people's lives. That's an idea that's really important to Johns Hopkins. And it's important that we're able to create an environment that brings the best faculty here and allows them to see a lifelong career where they will do their personal best here in terms of the research and education that they provide to the university. Now, the flip side of that is in thinking about the students who are going to come here and who are going to be the beneficiaries of this fabulous faculty that we have at Johns Hopkins. And something that I've been talking a lot about, and for very good reason, is when we think about individual excellence, we have to worry a lot about, are we a place that can bring the very best students, irrespective of their financial wherewithal, to the university? And to imagine that the only thing that matters for coming to Johns Hopkins is, do you have the raw talent? Do you have the passion? Do you have the commitment? Do you have the intellectual wherewithal to be here? Do you have the leadership potential as demonstrated in a variety of different things that you've done before coming to the university? And if you have that, you should be able to come to Johns Hopkins, even if your family is not one that has the privilege, that has the means to be able to get you here. And that's something that, for me, is very, very important. I think one of the best parts about being at a university is to see the role that universities play in completely transforming the circumstances of individuals. There is no more powerful agent for social change, for social transformation, for elevating people from their circumstances than university education. Education generally, but particularly university education at the end of a long K-12 role. In our case, we have many, many strengths at the university, and we've worked hard to generate funds for financial aid. And we have this great program, the Baltimore Scholars Program, which we started, as you know, which supports students from the Baltimore City school system coming to Johns Hopkins. These are all great things, but we suffer one very significant disability. If you look at the top 15 universities in the United States, all but one of them are need blind, meaning that the way the admissions process works is the best students are admitted, and then whatever happens after they're admitted happens in terms of the financial aid obligation that comes with enrolling that class. In other words, admissions are separate from financial aid decisions. Once the students have accepted our offer, you find a way to bring them in. That's true of 14 out of 15 universities in the top 15. it is not, regrettably, true of Johns Hopkins. We are not a need-blind institution. We've got 45% of our student body on financial aid, but we're still not in a position where we can say, whatever happens, wherever the chips fall after we make offers of admission, we'll take care of those kids and make sure that there's a place for them. We'll give them the requisite financial aid. We're not there yet. We're really, really close, but we're still about $10, $15 million a year away from being at the point where we can say we are a truly need-blind institution. You should know that this is a time when a lot of our peer institutions, because of the perilous financial circumstances in which they find themselves, are starting to retreat from financial aid commitments. They're starting to pull back. They're saying we've gone too far. We've got to find ways to reduce the scale, the scope of financial aid. My view is this is precisely the time in which it behooves institutions like Johns Hopkins to do just the opposite. Now is the time to extend, to augment, to deepen financial aid, not the opposite, and particularly at a time when so many families in this country can't see themselves in higher education. It's that much more important that institutions like Hopkins, with extensive alumni network, find ways to double and redouble their efforts to make sure we remain an accessible institution. So that's all bound up in the idea, to my mind, of individual excellence and creating that environment where we can bring the best and brightest to Johns Hopkins and make sure that they're supported during the time they're here. Now, the second thematic focus that I've brought to my presidency and to the university is the idea of Johns Hopkins as one university. And as I said a few moments ago, having the university distributed across a number of different campuses turns out to have many strengths, but it also does, I think, defeat, at least it makes it harder to have a real sense of a coherent, integrated intellectual community. We know, for instance, even the distance between Homewood and East Baltimore in a number of different dimensions is really, really large. And it means that if we're going to be really faithful to the role of Johns Hopkins, and in particular the role of Johns Hopkins in using its vast research capability to bring a number of different disciplines together to solve the most important problems and challenges of our society, we have to find ways to deepen this idea of Johns Hopkins as one university and to find ways that we integrate our university across all of its campuses. You know, for me, the dream of Johns Hopkins is captured very powerfully in so many different initiatives that we've seen emerge over the years at our great university. The fact that several decades ago, two visionary deans decided not to worry about who owned what department and so forth, but to combine their forces, in the case of engineering, the School of Medicine, and create a department of biomedical engineering that sits astride two different schools of the university. That's really hard to do. That's a very difficult thing to do organizationally, to get deans and schools to cooperate and to do something like that. But that act of imagination turns out, of course, as you know, to have created the world's premier Department of Biomedical Engineering. And when you look at the number of undergraduate students on the Homewood campus that are now taking majors in East Baltimore in the Bloomberg School of Public Health, that too is something that kind of confounds the natural order things. It's hard to get this kind of cooperation. But as it turns out, not only are there students doing majors in East Baltimore, undergraduates doing majors over in the Bloomberg School of Public Health, it turns out that our undergraduate majors in public health are now the largest number of majors of any program whatsoever in the Krieger School. Again, a very powerful testament to the integrated character of our university. We're responding to student need and interest and putting together these interdisciplinary programs, but we have to do more of that. And whether we're talking about neuroscience and how we think about linking up the understandings we're getting of the brain and the nervous system from imaging and from imaging studies and molecular studies in East Baltimore, how we link that up with psychology in Homewood, and then in turn translate that into ideas around curriculum development and pedagogy with the School of Education. These are the kinds of things that we must do if we are going to remain a strong, relevant, dynamic institution, and that's going to require more and more effort at linking up the different parts of the university together so that we are truly one coherent university. Let me close on the final theme, that is Johns Hopkins in the community. When I was installed as president in September, it sounds like a piece of furniture that is installed, or inaugurated is better, but at the time of my installation, I said that Johns Hopkins is not just in Baltimore. Johns Hopkins isn't just at Baltimore. Johns Hopkins is of Baltimore. And I think it's a really powerful idea that we are a part of a community and that we draw enormous strength and sustenance from our interaction with this community. And in turn, we give back to this community. We give back in the form of uncompensated medical care. This year, the hospital system alone will give $200 million of uncompensated medical care in the city. As it happens, I went to get a coffee just before coming to this event, and I just stumbled into Leaving Hall, which is just across from Garland Hall, and it was this wonderful moment that I came in and I was seeing all of these young kids together with students from Johns Hopkins doing a tutoring program where, as it turns out, I started talking to about 30 pairs of Hopkins undergrads and students from Baltimore City school system. And it turns out that for the duration of the year, one of our students is meeting twice a week with a mentee, and they're doing homework and various activities together for 2-3 hours a day, twice a week. And there's basically, this goes on apparently 4 to 5 days a week. You know, and again, it's real testament to the kinds of connections that exist between Hopkins and the city. There are more than 54 different programs, initiatives, partnerships that go on between Johns Hopkins and the Baltimore City school system. And tomorrow we're going to announce yet another one that we're quite excited about. This again is testament to the role that we play in the city and that we must play in the city. There is, to my mind, no greater challenge right now for the university than the quite extraordinary project that is underway in East Baltimore. And you'll know, as Baltimoreans, of what I speak. There is in the East Baltimore Development Initiative, which is of course just north of the medical campus, 88 acres that are now under the control of the East Baltimore Development Initiative Board, of which I am a proud member. And that undertaking, which was started, as you know, a number of years ago, has basically acquired land in the East Baltimore zone with a view that the community that once was there, a very proud, dynamic, African-American middle-class community, is going to be rejuvenated and recreated on that on that precinct. That community is of course right adjacent to the medical campus, to the East Baltimore Medical Campus. And the community that, although there was once a great proud and strong and vibrant community, of course we know over the last several years what it had become was something very different. As we know, 14%, only 14% of the community's men aged between 18 and 65 are employed. And that's already a case where substantial people don't even look for work anymore. Violence, infant mortality rates, on any of a number of dimensions, attrition rates from the high school, from public school, all of these things are much worse than the background rates in the city of Baltimore. It's a very seriously challenged community. But having said that, there's now a group of us, and Hopkins proudly at the center of this, along with partners, all levels of government. The Casey Foundation has been a wonderful and very visionary partner. But basically what we're committed to was not just worrying about the physical real estate of building new homes and communities that we're going to repopulate East Baltimore with, but really seeing this as an opportunity to create new social institutions, strong, vibrant community with great schools, great supporting social institutions, good health care, good daycare, and really see that as something that Johns Hopkins has a very strong stake in. And I think this is going to be, for the next 5-10 years, one of the projects that will truly test the mettle of Johns Hopkins and really be, I think, a very accurate measurement of whether or not we have properly discharged our responsibilities to the community or not. Whether that project, I can't even say whether or not, it must succeed, and when it succeeds, it will make us much stronger. But it is a very exciting project that's underway, which is going to harness a lot of our intellectual as well at some point. We've already made financial contributions, and we will do more. But this is something that we are very proud of and committed to. But at the same time, I said, we are of Baltimore and we are of this community, so too are we of a vast array of different international communities. And there was no stronger evidence of that than the response of the university to the earthquake in Haiti, and just seeing the way in which our docs started going over in special teams that were designed to help reestablished health services in Haiti. Our students were very active in fundraising for the community, and so on. Again, this really, to my mind, is the ethos of Johns Hopkins, is to understand that excellence alone is not enough. Excellence must be accompanied by a strong sense of humanity and a sense of responsibility. And I think that really does course through the veins of this great institution. So with that, I have shared with you a sense of what I think are the greatest priorities. I know full well my capacity, our capacity to be able to achieve much of what I've talked about today in terms of making a great institution that much stronger is going to turn intimately, it's going to turn inextricably on whether we form a good partnership in terms of being able to look to our alumni to give us advice, direction, moral, financial support, a range of different acts of encouragement and confidence in us that will ultimately allow us to realize all the expectations, all the hopes and dreams that you have for this great institution. I feel enormously blessed and fortunate to be able to lead this great university, and look forward to having a long and I hope very happy relationship with all of you as we build the dream of Johns Hopkins. Thank you so much for being here tonight.